Good morning, everyone. This is uh, this is Bob Adams with Housing Virginia, and I have everybody who's on the webinar on mute right now. This is such a short webinar that I think it's probably going to work best if I do most of the talking and we don't have a lot of background noise, and I don't think we're going to probably be able to stop too much for questions. What a couple things on questions. We are interested in your feedback and questions about Sourcebook. During the webinar, you'll see there's a chat box over to the right-hand side that you should see, and if you open that up, that gives you the opportunity to type in a question, and I will keep my eye on that during the webinar, and we'll try to address questions that come up during the webinar that way. The other thing is that when we get to the end, the last slide I'm going to put up is going to have my contact information, my colleague Elise Newman's contact information, and Mel Jones, who is our partner at Virginia Tech. And I would really encourage you, if you have questions about how to use Sourcebook or questions about additional data or where data comes from, to email us afterwards, and we will get the answer back to you. The other thing we're really interested in, this Sourcebook has been kind of an evolving set of data since we first launched it 4 years ago. We are continually adding to it and refining it, and we want to continue to do that. So it's very helpful to us if you can tell us what sort of information you need for your purposes to do your work that you don't find on Sourcebook, and we'll do our best to make sure that we get it put up on onto Sourcebook as soon as we can. So with that as introduction, let me just say a word about Housing Virginia. Many of you, I assume, are probably familiar with Housing Virginia, but it's an organization that has been around for 10 years. It's a very broad cross-section of individuals and organizations that are interested in advancing affordable housing opportunity in Virginia. Our board is very diverse in terms of all of the sectors that are represented, from the realtors and home builders and mortgage bankers and banks on the for-profit side to nonprofits and housing authorities and local governments, fair housing organizations. A very broad range of organizations came together 10 years ago and began to work on how they could agree on a strategy for advancing affordable housing. And what came out of that was really that Housing Virginia works in 3 arenas, and those are sort of summarized by the tagline that you see up on the screen: Inform, Connect, Unlock. We're going to be doing the Inform part today, which is we provide a lot of data primarily through the website, but through other resources as well. And the purpose of that data is to help to educate the public, policymakers, elected officials, and to put data in the hands of people like yourselves who are oftentimes trying to make the case why we need more affordable housing in our communities around the state. So we do a lot with data and information. The second area we operate in is the Connect. Is we undertake research subject areas every year or two, and oftentimes those are about how housing, especially affordable housing, connects to other important community issues. So we've looked at housing and economic development, housing and transportation, the connection of housing to schools. Right now we've just begun working on the connections between housing and health. So that and a number of other areas have been kind of in our sights over the last number of years, and we use that research then to fuel community dialogue about these issues through local forums and presentations and symposia. And then finally, we do through Unlocking, we work a lot with local partners around the state, perhaps like yourselves, who are interested in seeing more affordable housing in your communities, and we try to do provide support and training and tools that can be used to help communicate the need for housing. So with that as introduction, let me get right to the topic today, which is Sourcebook. You're looking at the homepage for Housing Virginia, so you get there, you can see the site location is housingvirginia.org, pretty easy. And on the front page, you'll see right here in the center a large icon for Sourcebook. That's where we're going to go today, but some of you may be signed up for webinars we're going to do tomorrow and then again on Thursday morning, both of those 8:30 to 9. Tomorrow we're going to be looking at these two tools, Playbook and the research library we have, and then on Thursday we'll be looking at a series of calculators that are a part of Sourcebook. I'll point them out today, but we're not going to talk about them too much. So let me click on the Sourcebook icon, and that will take you to the opening Sourcebook page. And this Sourcebook is a partnership between Housing Virginia, the Virginia Association of Realtors, and the Center for Housing Research at Virginia Tech. And the three of us have been working together on this, as I said, for over 4 years now. And that partnership has many benefits, not the least of which is that we are able, through the Virginia Association of Realtors, to get data on a very current basis about home sales and trends in home sales. So we are able to update some of the data in Sourcebook on a quarterly basis. So you'll see right here in the middle of the page, the last time we updated data was for the third quarter of 2015. We are about to have another update that will take us through the fourth quarter of 2015, through the end of 2015. So we are usually 3 to 6 months lagging behind real time, and that's pretty good. You're not likely to find data that is kept that current. Now, as we go through here, you're going to see there's a lot of other data that does not have to do with home sales or does not come to us through the realtors, and that is sourced through a wide range of from Census to Department of Labor, a whole range of databases, some in Virginia, some national. That data is, most of it is updated on an annual basis. Some of it is updated more frequently than that, but we have one large data update that occurs annually, and that one is about to occur. So if you're not on the Housing Virginia mailing list, please get on it. You can do it through the website. And we'll send out a notice as soon as that big update is done, and then you'll see a lot of data that as we go through here, you're going to see there's still some data in here that's 2013, 2014, most of it's 2015, but that'll all advance a year once that big update is done. Okay, so I'm going to, I've scrolled down and you can see here basically all of the data sets that are included within Sourcebook. The Housing Affordability Index, Housing Plus Commuting, housing costs versus income, and then a range of other affordability measures. And then down here are these calculators, which we're going to talk about on Thursday morning. They take a little more time, but very interesting tools, and come back on Thursday if you have the chance. And then I'll talk a little bit about downloadable data. If you're a real data geek, we have the ability to get you raw data in spreadsheets that you can manipulate yourselves. Okay, the very first one I skipped was housing quick facts, and I will come back to that at the end. Let me start with the Housing Affordability Index. So what this tells you is how affordable is housing at a particular income range. So let's pick Housing Affordability Index at 60% of median. And if I click on that, it takes me to the HAI 60% page. And you'll see you get to make a choice here of what you can either look at this for the state as a whole, or for any of the MSAs in the state, or any of the cities and counties in the state. So let's, we're right here, pick Charlottesville, city of Charlottesville. So now we're looking at, for households making 60% of median, what percent of their income is needed to afford a home. So in the city of Charlottesville, 2015 third quarter, and this overall affordability index here, I think, is probably not nearly as helpful. It's simply a weighted average of these two. But when we talk about affordability, generally we are talking either about home ownership or about rental. So while the overall HAI tells you something in general, I think it's best to focus in on the home ownership and rental separately. So what this is saying is that for a household at 60% of median in Charlottesville, which is $26,700 a year, in order to rent, the median rental cost is $971. That family at 26,708 would need to spend a little over 45% of their income for rent. For home ownership, it's much, much worse. Charlottesville is obviously a high-cost market, high-cost home ownership market. So somebody at $26,000 income, to afford the median sales price house, which is $290,500, they would need to spend 73% of their income. So as we all know, 30% of income is the benchmark for when housing is affordable. Anything over 30% is considered either rent burdened or housing or homeownership cost burdened. And in the example I just pulled up, somebody at 60% of median is going to be very severely cost burdened with the median rent or the median sales price. If you go down, scroll down a little bit further, what you find is a chart that shows you over time. This goes back 5 years to the fourth quarter of 29, so it's basically a rolling 5-year chart. And it's the blue line is all housing, the green line is home ownership, the red line is rental. You can see a gradual trend upward in rental. Home ownership, as we all know, 2009, we are still in the housing crash. So housing prices were falling, and reached their peak, reached the bottom around 2012, and you can see there's been a gradual rise. When you see something like this, fourth quarter 2014, this big dip down, I think, keep in mind we're getting sales data coming out of City of Charlottesville on a quarterly basis. So I would not read much into a dip like that. That's just a quirk in the sales that occurred in that one quarter that tended to be much lower cost homes. But it's best to read these graphs always kind of with a trend line through the center, and not get too much caught up in the unusual peaks and valleys that occur there. And the fact that this drops on rental as well during that fourth quarter tells me it's probably a data problem, because it's not plausible that rents also plunged in the fourth quarter of 2014. So there's probably some issue with the data. So better to look when you're looking at these at the broad trend lines. And then there's a map down here which will show you just for the state the relative affordability index for someone at 60% of median for, and again, this is looking at the overall at the overall housing affordability index here. So let me, and now the other thing I'll mention is this is a quirk in the way the Sourcebook is set up right now, but if you're in the HAI index right now, you can't go back into that index. You have to back out to the next page, and then you could go back in and pick a different a different income limit. We're trying to fix that. We will get that fixed, but for now, you can't. When you're in that page, you can't go back in using the menu on the side. So let's go. Let's take a quick look at housing and commuting affordability, and we'll do that again at let's say at 60% of median. And again, we'll pick, let's pick a community where I'm guessing there may be a lot of commuting, Fairfax County. So if you go down to here, you'll see homeownership and community 54. So what this does is it adds the cost of commuting to the cost of housing. And a lot of folks believe that's really a more accurate way to measure housing cost burden because typically, as you know, housing gets cheaper the further you move away from job centers and such. So the cost of commuting really is a part of housing cost. In Fairfax, if you scroll down a little bit further, you'll see the detail on this. Yeah, right. So indeed, the commuting time in Fairfax is long, an average of 73 minutes. I'm sure some people have much longer than that, but 73. So what this shows you then here is, here's the housing affordability without commuting. That's what we were just looking at in the previous section. And then here's the addition. In Fairfax, 4% is the national norm. In Fairfax, it's higher at 6%. So then this will tell you the housing affordability index with commuting. So for homeownership housing in Fairfax at 60% of median, it's 54%. For rental, it's 39, almost 39%. So again, both of these for somebody at 60% of median very dramatically exceed what would be considered affordable. And again, you can do this for any jurisdiction in the state. I'm trying to think if, let's look at Richmond just to see if that commuting time is less. Richmond, 42 minutes. So, but we've still got these extraordinarily high 67% and 54% affordability indexes when you add commuting cost in. Again, this is for somebody at 60. If we looked at 80 or at median, 100% of median, obviously you'd find a lot more affordability. Okay, so let's go to the next category, which is housing cost versus income. And you're going to see here there's a bunch of data sets. Housing income characteristics by year, housing for affordability of for sale housing, affordability of rental housing, cost burden, 30% of median income, that's extremely low income versus housing costs. A housing price index, which is a federal, then median gross rent and median family rent. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I would encourage you to just to go in here and play around and look. Let's pick Albemarle County here. So what this just does is it gives you, this is the first of those data sets, housing and income characteristics by year. And so it just gives you a lot of information over the past 5 years. and again, this is about to be updated through the end of 2014. But it'll have the affordability indexes at 80, at 60, at the bottom quartile, which is the 25% of the poorest, the lowest income households in the community. You can see for that group, the affordability indexes are ridiculously high. You have to, you are paying more for housing than your entire income. So obviously for families at those income levels, some significant subsidy is absolutely necessary. And then just some other useful information which you may need: the number of households in the community, the split between owner and renter, the median income for households, the median income for owners, median income for renters, the median rent, median owner cost, and sales price. These are all of the data points that are used to create the housing affordability index. So this is a quick place to look for a lot of data that contributes to housing affordability. So there's a question, and so is it possible to access data that goes back further than 2010? The answer to that is yes. We just keep 5 years back that stored here on the website for purposes of the charts and graphs, but all that older data is retained, and that's where I would take Mel Jones' email address when I get to the end here, and you can email her with a specific request for a data set, and she can provide that. And I think the data right now that we have goes back maybe 8, 9 years, maybe 10 years. Okay, so let's go look at one other category here, which is other affordability measures. We have residential building permits that you can look at. Here are building permits for the state as a whole. Blue is single family. Green is multifamily. You can see the dip as the recession was hitting. If you look at, let's look in more detail. For example, we'll pick Chesterfield County. And then you can see these trends a little more distinctly, where single-family building permits have declined, hit the bottom in 2010, 2011, and have begun to rise in 2012. This data is actually mislabeled. We have these building permit data that's showing right now is through 2013, and I think we will update through 2014 within the next week or so. We do have a problem with permit data. This comes from Weldon Cooper, as you can see at the bottom of the chart here at UVA, and we understand they are no longer going to publish building permit data, and I don't think Census is doing it either. So we'll have to see if we can find find another source. If we looked at let's look at permit data for the Richmond region and see what that looks like now. So you see the same pattern, and for the region as a whole, a much weaker recovery. And that recovery, if we could go out here to 2014, 2015, you'd see that is not, that's not popping back up. It's staying as a rather shallow recovery. Okay, let me look at other affordability measures. So remember, I can't get there. I have to back out and then go to it again. So mortgage volume by year and volume of home sales by year. That's a aggregate sales data for your area. Median sales price is something that often is an important data point in localities. Let's look at let's pick a suburb of Stafford County, which is kind of an outward suburb from Washington, or increasingly so. And so the green line is detached housing. The red line is attached. In Stafford, this is probably a lot of townhouses in the attached category, maybe some multifamily. But you can see a pretty clear trend in increasing sales prices from throughout the whole period of the graph. The third quarter of 2015, we're at, for a detached house, 305,000, whereas at the beginning point we're at 220,000. So that's $85,000 increase in median home price over a 5-year period. That's a very significant rise. And then let's look at, I'm going to back out of there and go to, I'm going to show you this very quickly. Number of assisted rental housing units. So this data is old, but it's still somewhat useful. This was compiled by VHDA in 2010. It hasn't been updated yet. We're kind of hoping to update that, but this will tell you this is for Virginia as a whole. You can select any jurisdiction here. We'll look at Fairfax County again. So what this would tell you is that in 2010 in Fairfax County, there were a total of, for extremely low income, this is vouchers and project-based assistance, there were almost 8,000, and then there were other low-income project-based units, 5,000. So Fairfax, about 13,500 or so assisted housing units. And then if you go to the, well, let me back out and go to the assisted rental housing need, and I'm going to go back to Fairfax again. So what this chart will do is it shows you, and this is when this pops up here, it says 2013 second quarter. That's incorrect. You see up here it says 2015 third quarter. So we'll get that changed. But this shows you the number of rent-burdened households in lower income rent-burdened households in Fairfax. And then this blue line over here shows you that number I was just looking at, which is the total amount of assisted rental housing supply in Fairfax. So it just gives you a sense of, here's the need, the remaining need, and here's the amount of housing that has, the amount of assisted rental housing that's been provided. So it's just a comparison between how significant our problem is and how limited the amount of work we've done so far to solve that problem. Again, this blue line, 2010 data, but for those of you who follow affordable housing, we haven't added a tremendous amount of deeply subsidized rental housing to the housing stock since 2010. Not a lot of new vouchers every year. Of course, there's no new Section 8 housing, place-based housing being done, and there's no new public housing being done. So that number has come up a little bit, but really it's the low-income housing tax credit program that's only adding to that stock right now. All right, so we are right at 9 o'clock. So let me go back here to the start page, and I mentioned downloadable data at the beginning. All of these data sets exist in large databases and spreadsheets. They are available to the public, to you. If you want to, manipulate the data yourself, we can get those data sets to you. And let me pull up these contact names. So myself and Elise, we both work with Housing Virginia. If you have questions about anything I've talked about today, need more information, if you have a question that is very technical and specific about the data, about a source, or you want some data that is not accessible through the site, then I would suggest contacting Mel. But let me emphasize one other point, which is we would really like to get ideas from you for additional data that we can add to the site that will make it more helpful to you. We will be adding in the next few months the homeless point-in-time data counts, so those will be available. We're looking at adding another calculator that would be looking at what the housing wage is for every jurisdiction around the state. That is the hourly rate that someone needs to make in order to afford the median rental apartment or the median priced home. That kind of data is also helpful in just making the case for housing affordability. Before I sign off, let me just look at a couple of these questions. Where can I go to register for other webinars being offered? You can go to the link is in the chat window, so you can register by following that link. If I have a large service area, is there any way to combine the data from multiple locales? In the past, I've been running each of the locales separately and finding averages by hand, which would downloadable. Yes, I think that's a pretty technical question, but I think yes, downloadable data, and you could manipulate that yourself and do those combinations. There is one of the calculators allows you to compare up to 3 jurisdictions, but I think you're wanting to actually combine data. Do you have a cheat sheet page that reviews the AMI numbers for a region in terms of what is the annual income equals 60% or 80% AMI? So we don't have, well, I didn't get to the quick facts page, and I would encourage you to go back and pull up that quick facts page, and that shows you some, I think it's 4 or 5 key indicators in for whatever jurisdiction you've selected. But what you are asking for here specifically, we don't have. But I would encourage you to send me an email and be more specific about what would be helpful, and we'll see if we can provide that. And then I can see Elise here has put up the link for the webinars that are going to be tomorrow morning and Thursday morning. Tomorrow morning, we're looking at Playbook and the research library. Playbook is basically a compendium of affordable housing programs by jurisdiction throughout the state, and then the research library is pretty much what it says. It allows you to tap into a very broad range of housing research that's been done on a bunch of topics. And then on Thursday morning, we're doing calculators. So with that, I'm 4 minutes past my stopping point, so I really appreciate everybody being here today. And we're going to do these Sourcebook webinars every quarter or so. By the time we do the next one, we'll have a lot of new data in. And please email if you've got questions and suggestions, and we will definitely get back to you. Thanks again, everybody. Have a good day.